So the idea of mask wearing is to stop viruses coming into our respiratory system and infecting any one of our cells therein. So if we are believers in the germ theory of disease and we want to stop viruses from breeding in our lungs, this actually only happens because the cells go through all these actions that end up having the virus being mass reproduced, and in the process the cell generally dies. Like for the COVID-19, it allegedly infects a cell, and the cell mass reproduces it. In the process, the cell is dismantled, it's destroyed. So we're being told that masks will lower the chances of us developing this COVID-19 disease. This all that I'm saying too is just hypothetically speaking, as if it's all the truth, because I'm speaking about the dominant ideology here, the dominant narrative. If we have a virus, a COVID-19 in our lung, and it successfully infects a cell, it's going to be leaving us with, I've asked Vincent Racaniello for an average amount of offspring per virus infection, and he just ignored me on Instagram, and I can't find anything about this. There's probably nothing about it in the literature. Why would anyone ask and set out, put money together to figure out how many offspring a virus has on average? But it'd be at least 20, no more than 2 trillion. So let's just stick with 200. Let's imagine you have one virus in you, and you go and put your mask on, and the virus just finishes infecting one of your cells, and then you've got 200 COVID-19s in your lungs that are just, perhaps they would have just been breathed out, exhaled out. Maybe they would have been coughed out or spoken or yelled out or sneezed. But in general, let's say that the 200 are there, and maybe generally they're just going to float out when you breathe out, when you exhale, when you sit down or whatever, when a bit of wind passes by them. But this time, actually they're not, because you've got a mask on, and apparently it stops the particles. Like we've found in the well-controlled experiments, mask wearing does, the mask can catch the particle, but we haven't actually found a well-controlled experiment that has pronounced the disease-lowering effect, namely the respiratory or infectious disease lowering effect. And this might be why. It might not be, because what I'm saying is most likely the case is true, which is that germs don't actually cause disease. That's my best guess. Obviously I'm a minority there, and the majority are guessing that they do cause disease, and we're all humans here, so I'm not like running around proud about this guess. But if I'm wrong, then maybe masks actually haven't pronounced the disease lowering effect because of what I'm talking about in this video. Hypothetically speaking, you've got a COVID in your lung. It finally manages to reproduce in one of your cells, and you end up with an extra 200. And all of them generally could have come out, but they were caught on your mask, and then they just had that much extra time to hang around in your lungs. And, one COVID infecting a lung is okay. 200 of them infecting a cell, that's okay. But, once every COVID has 200 babies, and that's going to exponentially be powering along how many COVID, you're going to end up with a lung full of COVID in no time if you wear a mask, and the mask actually stops them from escaping. Because, or if it has any kind of obstacle if it provides any kind of obstacle for the viruses to get out, then you really ought to be worried about that one rogue COVID infecting a cell, and then rather than all its offspring being breathed out without any drama, they're actually just stuck there and eventually you end up with a lung full of COVID, maybe. I'm not trying to discourage anyone to not wear a mask. You know, YouTube shouldn't ban me for this, because the Surgeon General himself will say similar things in 2020 that actually I don't think they do anything. Or what did he say? I don't know. But it's conceded amongst people who have looked right into it that no well-controlled experiment can pronounce the so-called infectious disease lowering effect through mask wearing. I'm not trying to discourage anyone. I'm just saying I haven't heard anyone talk about this. I haven't heard anyone bring this point up or discuss the mask situation from this angle, that, well, it's not really. I've heard people who say, oh, you don't want to trap them in your lung. You know, that's a dead end to me, because if there's any obstacle of it going out, then there's an obstacle of it going into, and I think technically it doesn't actually mean it. That's a moot point. But the point of one COVID turning into 200 in your lungs, and that 200 having a hard time getting out, and then having an easier time infecting more cells and exponentially turning into a lung full of COVID, I haven't heard anyone talk about that. I'm not feeling any pride about that either. I'm just saying